parts of Wales, though some may feed inland at times. Where we see the clear skies overnight, that's where we're expecting quite a sharp frost and some patches of ice too. So do take care if you're out and about during early Friday morning. So the showers are set to continue around coastal areas of Scotland, though some may feed inland at times with a brisk northerly flow pushing them inland. Mainly falling as snow over high ground, though likely to see some flurries to lower levels too. A few showers feeding into northern coast of Northern Ireland, northwest England and northern parts of Wales too, so still a snow risk here. But otherwise there'll be plenty of bright sunshine to start on Friday, but still feeling particularly chilly and with those icy stretches too. So otherwise, for Friday, it's going to be a mix once again of those wintry showers and some bright sunshine. Showers mainly feeding into northwestern coasts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England and northern parts of Wales. These heavy at times and turning to sleet and snow, mainly above high ground, but once again could fall to lower levels too. Elsewhere, plenty of autumnal sunshine, but once again it is going to be feeling chilly for this time in November. As we head into Saturday, unsettled weather as Storm Bert moves its way in from the west. Heavy outbreaks of rain, this falling to snow at times in the north and strong winds across parts of Scotland too. And we do have an amber snow and ice warning issued for parts of Scotland, so do stay up to date to our forecasts. So an unsettled weekend ahead. Otherwise, that is it from me. Bye-bye for now.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win Christmas on Us this year. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo.
Last time Britain spent 2.5, of course, was in 2010 with Labour. Now, we will do that
Labour gave their cast-iron pledge to boost defence spending in the election campaign, but now we hear they're scrapping drones, choppers and ships at the same time our missiles are being lobbed into Russia.
Absolutely. Britain and UK is now directly involved in this war.
So are the anonymous men in lanyards gagging for World War III? Also tonight.
It was April 2020, the height of the first COVID-19 lockdown, and a Second World War veteran was capturing the hearts of millions.
He won our hearts during COVID, but his kids have now trashed Captain Tom's reputation. So do we need a big charity revolution? Elsewhere.
Shocking. It was upsetting. I'm a law-abiding person. Nobody likes to... I respect the police.
Friend of the show and Telegraph star Alison Pearson is cleared in her police hate crime probe. So what now for the thousands of others who don't have the same platform to fight back? And a terrorist who plotted to blow up London could be walking free in January. I'll reveal the grim details shortly. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister called him a truly one-off. Rest in peace, John Prescott. Tonight's panel are ready to go. I'm joined by political consultant Suzanne Evans, Conservative peer Lord Bailey and former Labour advisor Matthew Larser. And can you guess what happened when the BBC flew 6,000 miles to interview a YouTube star?
I have to say that the real Logan Paul looks very different. Did you come all the way over here to ask about how I look? Is Logan coming? I'm right here, bud.
Just why are we cutting defence spending while squaring up to Russia? First, your news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Ben, thank you. Good evening. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom. Russian President Vladimir Putin has threatened to strike the UK with a new ballistic missile after using the weapon to hit a target in Ukraine. Downing Street condemned Mr. Putin for further escalating the conflict by using a ballistic missile with a range of several thousand kilometres against the city of Dnipro. Mr. Putin confirmed Russia has tested a new intermediate-range weapon, saying it came in response to Ukrainian strikes on the Russian territory with US and British missiles earlier this week. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for the leader of Hamas, as well as Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and the country's former Defence Minister, Yoav Gallant. They say these warrants are as a result of alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity. In response, an Israeli foreign minister has said the ICC has, quote, lost all legitimacy with their ruling on Netanyahu and Gallant. Meanwhile, a Hamas senior official has told the Reuters news agency that these warrants are an important step towards justice. The King has paid a warm personal tribute to Lord John Prescott, saying he remembered with great fondness his unique and indomitable character and infectious sense of humour. King Charles hailed the former Deputy Prime Minister, who has died at the age of 86, for his decades of public service in frontline politics. His family said he'd spent his life trying to improve the lives of others, fighting for social justice and protecting the environment. In other news, journalist Alison Pearson has told GB News she is hugely relieved that Essex Police has dropped its investigation into her tweets. Ms Pearson was being investigated for allegedly stirring up racial hatred with a social media post made in November of last year. But the force now says no charges will be brought, having sought advice from the Crown Prosecution Service. Ms Pearson says her case has revealed the appalling overuse of non-crime hate incidents to silence opinions. Detectives investigating the murder of a woman whose body was found in the boot of a car have released a new CCTV image on the night they believe she was killed. The image shows Harshita Brella walking in the area around the Corby boating lake in Northamptonshire on Sunday, the 10th of November. She is seen in the picture with her husband, 23-year-old Pankaj Lamba, who is being described by police as a prime suspect in the investigation. Police are now searching for Lamba, who they wish to talk to in connection with her death. And one of 6 British tourists being treated for suspected methanol poisoning in Laos has died. 28-year-old Simone White from Kent had fallen ill after reportedly drinking free shots from a local bar in the resort of Vang Vieng. 4 people had already died following the suspected poisonings in the Southeast Asian country. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Ben.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. Over the past 24 hours, Ukraine's been lobbing long-range British missiles into Russian territory, and the Ruskies say we're now directly involved in the war.
Absolutely. Britain and UK is now directly involved in this war because this fighting cannot happen without without NATO staff.
So fears of World War III are escalating and things are getting fruity indeed. So what do the gigabrains in government decide to announce just hours later? Our armed forces will lose around £500 million worth of military equipment in a cost-cutting exercise. That includes drones, ships, helicopters and tankers, all heading for the scrap heap. At the same time, we're dragged into a street fight with Putin. Once again, Labour have been caught red-handed bending the truth, and for diplomacy's sake, I'll call them porkies this time round. Let me remind you what their so-called cast-iron defence pledges were during the election campaign.
The commitment to 2.5% is absolute, and we will get to that 2.5%. It is very important. We need to do that within our fiscal rules.
The Prime Minister there, and the Defence Secretary was at it too.
Last time Britain spent 2.5, of course, was in 2010 with Labour. Now, we will do that as part of the getting to grips with the challenges that we face. So we will launch, next week, the Prime Minister will launch a strategic defence review. It's the way we get to grips with the threats we face.
And the MP, Luke Pollard, scrambled to tell the British public that Labour would match Rishi Sunak's pledge on defence spending.
Well, there's no doubt that Keir has changed the Labour Party, and if he's changed the Labour Party, he can change the country as well. Labour's committed to not only 2.5% of GDP being spent on defence, but supporting our nuclear deterrent with an unshakable commitment to NATO, our allies, and support for Ukraine.
Right, OK, so not only have Labour failed to stick to their promise to boost defence spending to 2.5%, they've actually done the complete opposite at a time when we need it most. But don't take my word for it. In September, a new report from the House of Lords International Relations and Defence Committee raised concerns about the capability of the British Army, concluding that its current size was inadequate to meet NATO commitments and sustain large-scale conflict. Lord de Morley put it bluntly, successive governments have attempted to maintain the notion of the UK as a global power, but the war in Ukraine has been a wake-up call, laying bare the gap between that ambition and reality. Now, look, I love my country, indeed, but there's an unnerving arrogance that our suited political leaders in Westminster think ill-equipped Britain can square up to the world's biggest nuclear superpower without consequence. I don't know what the end of this war looks like. I'm not an expert. But what I can say, absolutely, and I guarantee this, is that my children won't be cannon fodder for the anonymous men in lanyards who seem desperate to engineer World War III. Let's get the thoughts of my panel. Political consultant Suzanne Evans, Conservative peer Lord Bailey and the former Labour advisor Matthew Larser. Very good evening to you all. Welcome to the warm studio. It's very chilly outside. Matthew Larser, what's your party thinking when it comes to Ukraine? Because Starmer is now allowing Ukraine to lob our missiles into Russia. They've not sinned through their 2.5% defence pledge. And now it seems that we want to square up to Vladimir Putin, a nuclear superpower.
OK, well, let's just unpack that. I mean, what's happening in terms of the use of the missiles in Ukraine is that together with allies, notably the Americans, we are...
Your mic's gone, Matthew. We're going to sort that out.
No problem.
Suzanne, same question to you. Is this naive of the Labour government? Are we playing with fire?
Yeah, I think this timing is completely wrong. So here we are making obvious defence cuts in advance, I have to say, of the defence spending review, which that seems very premature to me. But threats to our nation are quite clearly growing, and I think things have escalated clearly this week as well. So we've got Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, all of them are powers that we should be quite seriously thinking about now, and all of them working at least with one of the other in some way or another. And yet we're going to be short of helicopters, frigates, defence ships, so on and so forth. Now, it might well be true that this equipment does need replacing, but I think to do it now, at this particular time, is sending a message to the strong men of this world. Britain's open. You know, we don't have that defence capability. Under the previous Conservative government, our armed forces have been reduced by 32%, from around 207,000 to just over 140,000. So we've already got problems, and Labour's only making it worse, I think.
Matthew.
Yeah, so look, absolutely. Can you hear me now? Absolutely. Brilliant. I mean, look, on Ukraine, we are working together with our allies on, with these missiles, which is, we're not doing it on our own, we're doing it with the Americans. But, I mean, I can see what you mean about hollowing out capabilities, but Labour is absolutely clear. The 2.5% pledge remains. This 500 million quid's worth of so-called cuts that it's doing, they are very, very specific. I mean, let me just run through a couple of them. The two of the tankers haven't been to sea for 17 years. One of the frigates is never going to see sea again because it's structurally unsound.
HMS Northumberland.
Yeah, no, that's the one that's structurally damaged. The two tankers haven't been to sea for 17 years, and some of the helicopters are 35 years, and there are new ones coming. And the two amphibious assault ships, HMS Albion and Bulwark, were effectively costing £9 million a year to do nothing.
Let me respond to it. I've got friends in the Navy, and I asked them about this today, and they said, they quote, "I just think they're continuing the slow degradation of the military. It's fine scrapping old ships if they actually get replaced, but we won't see a new one in service for ages. We need to increase..."
Well, £3 billion quid extra investment, Sean, is going in that you guys didn't do.
Let's separate these two things out. First of all, foremost, the missiles in Ukraine, the Labour government is doing the correct thing. And when Putin says that we're engaged with them, we've been engaged with them for years now. We've been paying for that war. And let's be clear, when he threatens nuclear missiles and stuff, he isn't threatening us, he's threatening NATO. He is in no position to take on NATO. NATO could be stronger, but it's significant.
I mean, do you want to take that risk?
No.
He's widely called a despot, a nutcase, a dictator.
Too late. That risk was taken years ago. The minute we supported the Ukraine, we were in that war. It's way too late now to back out. So the fact that we got involved means that we need to be involved and see it to the end. That's a fact. So Labour are doing the correct thing.
See it to the end. What does that look like?
Who knows? I simply don't know. But if that's the case, Ben, we should just give him what he wants. Why did we bother supporting Ukraine at all? We should just give him what he wants. The Labour government at this point...
Well, let me ask you, why do we bother supporting Ukraine? They're not in NATO. The border's thousands of miles away. What does it mean? What does it mean for us?
It means...
Why should our hard-earned taxpayer money be endlessly funding Ukraine?
It's got nothing to do with taxpayer money. It's about our freedoms. It's about our freedoms and our safety. Some things are worth paying for, and our freedom and our safety absolutely is that. Totally. Putin and the careers of this world have shown that they are strident, and if they are not stopped, we'll end up having to deal with them much closer into Europe. So we made a decision years ago to deal with them. We cannot back out now. Totally. So there's no doubt in my mind.
Suzanne, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I agree that Putin has to be stood up to. That's absolutely right. But I think, personally, I disagree. I think this is a dangerous escalation at a very dangerous time.
How do we stand up to him then?
And I also think what's particularly wrong with this is Joe Biden sending those missiles over to Ukraine just as he lost the election. I think that was a terrible thing to do. And I don't think it's a coincidence. I think he's meddling. Last-ditch stand before he's booted out of office.
You do not know that because in America...
Well, why did he do it then?
In America, they have a handover period, which they're in now. You don't know that he hasn't said to Trump...
Trump's already criticised that decision, so I don't think Trump's very happy with it.
We're going to do this. Well, then Trump could take them back. But the basic point remains. Years ago, we decided to support the Ukraine and take on Russia. You can't back out halfway through. Because if you do that, he's more than one.
You're absolutely right about not backing out, but we don't have to escalate the concept and poke the Russian bear again and make him worse and potentially trigger a massive world war.
If you are in a fight... and you relinquish to the threats of the other guy, you're done.
Sure, this isn't some scrap at 2 a.m. outside McDonald's. We're talking about the potential of nuclear war.
OK, why have we bothered with a nuclear deterrent? Why do the Americans have one? Why do the Indians and the Pakistanis have one? If you let someone continually bully you because they have a nuclear deterrent, they'll turn up on your doorstep.
Let's go
and
back.
if we were going to relent, we should have done it earlier, not now.
Let's go back to our nuclear deterrent. I mean, this is what we're saying. Our armed forces are in a mess. Remember, earlier this year, we tested that nuclear deterrent and it didn't work. It failed twice. And Matthew, it's all very well you talking about how these frigates haven't gone to sea for 2 years. Why is that? Because recruitment for our armed forces has been an absolute disaster.
Matthew,
We've not had people to man this equipment.
I mean, I totally agree with Sean on this. The issue is we need to give our armed forces the equipment that they deserve, and that's why £3 billion extra was announced in the budget. But you can't have. You remember the S Minister episode where there's a hospital which is full of administrators, doesn't have any patients. You can't pay £9 million a year for 2 ships that haven't been to sea for years. Obviously, we need replacements. That's why the money is there. Sadly, it does take time to build.
The problem here for the government is this is not a replacement. This is still a removal. Some kit is better than no kit.
It is, absolutely.
Now, if it was about the £3 billion, the announcement would have said, we are giving you X amount of ships. What they've said is they're taking away, which is at this point is an accounting trick to save some money. Ultimately, the forces would need to be built up quickly, and that means the £3 billion needs to be spent quickly. But the real problem, right, is that we have told our young people, as you just did, Ben, that they shouldn't be involved in defending the country. That is going to be the problem.
I don't want to see an escalation of war. By the way, nor does Donald Trump.
Neither do we. But the point is, if we tell people, our people, that this country is not worth defending, it doesn't matter how many.
Nobody's saying this country's not worth defending. No, he didn't. He talked about escalation of a war. And he asked a question as a journalist.
If you keep talking to our young people, calling them cannon fodder, people on the left regularly tell people about our terrible...
Sean, I'll tell you now, my kids never go on the front lines of Ukraine to fight for the Ukraine against Russia.
If that's the conversation we have publicly, then our children...
Sure?
Yes, I have two.
So how old are they?
15 and 17.
OK, so if my
son came to me tomorrow morning and said he wanted to join the forces, the only conversation we'd have is which part of it. If you tell our
That's
children...
slightly different to being conscribed to the front line.
The minute you're in your forces, you could end up anywhere. And quite frankly, if you join the forces now, you'll end up in the conflict that we're in. Yeah, I'm aware of that.
I think we get lost in the discussions about Ukraine. We need to send the money. We need to win this fight. There are thousands of young men, Ukrainian men, Russian men, dying in trenches. I've seen the videos on YouTube, on X, walking around corners in trenches, blowing each other's brains out. These are 18, 19, 20-year-olds. Millions.
But we're defending freedom, Ben.
Nobody wanted to have the war.
Absolutely.
And remember,
apart from Putin.
And you're the person who just said we shouldn't send the missiles. The missiles, unfortunately, are part of trying to stop that happening. If you have a war with someone and you don't front up and show that you fight, they will run all over you.
Absolutely. The missiles are there to shorten the conflict, not to extend it.
Well, let's see if it works, shall we? I'm not convinced it's going to work. I think it's a huge risk, and I think it's going to make things worse.
Do you understand?
The risk is already there.
In the fight. We made that decision years ago.
OK, all right, we'll agree to disagree.
Look at the history of this country. Every time we've appeased someone, Hitler, for instance, it's worked out worse for us.
We won in the end.
Yeah, in the end, 20-odd million people later, because we didn't stick to our guns. You appease a bully, you're in trouble. That's a fact.
OK, well, I'm just saying, look, at the time when Putin has said if these missiles are used, these Shadow Storm missiles are used, it is a grave escalation, and he has threatened nuclear war before, and I know you're saying we have to front up, but the result of that consequence, calling his bluff, is nuclear war. We won't be here sitting on this sofa talking about this in a couple of years.
He might have called our bluff. At some point, you've got to get into it.
You want to take?
No,
it's not going into a casino.
But the point is, but you're missing the point. It's a risk that he wants to take, because when he threatens us with nuclear weapons, what do you think we do? We don't go and get a pea shooter. We go and get our nuclear weapons. He knows that. But
so everyone's just firing off nuclear warheads.
No, but what he knows is
back.
We have a history of appeasement, and he's trying to force us to settle. We at some point have to get involved.
Trump thinks he can end it by agreeing a deal where Ukraine say they won't join NATO for 20-odd years, and Russia take a bit of land from what was the region?
Let's all hope Trump is right and he can negotiate something. But the point is, we are in a weak position if we show every time he rattles his sabre, we will relent. Trump will have nothing to stand on if we don't show we're prepared to fight.
OK. I also don't think it's a coincidence Joe Biden has allowed these missiles to be used in the final weeks of his tenure. I think it's politically, sinister, if you ask me. Anyway, thank you very much, Suzanne, Sean, Matthew. Now, a slight change of gear, to say the least. It's the final week of our Christmas giveaway, and we're on the countdown to the big day. You could win £25,025 in tax-free cash, shopping vouchers and GB News Christmas gifts, but you have to hurry as time's running out. Here's all the details you need to win.
Just 34 days until Christmas, and it's the final week to see how you could enjoy it on us. That's £20,025 in tax-free cash to make 2025 fantastic. £5,000 to spend on gifts for all of the family. £500 in vouchers to buy a slap-up Christmas lunch at your favourite supermarket. And finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. Plus, we're going to get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2 or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
All right, nuclear war to Christmas Day. That's a gear change indeed. Right, up next, after it's been revealed that the family of Captain Tom Moore benefited significantly from links to the charity set up in his name, I'm asking, is it time to get tougher on charities and regulate them more closely? This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
It seems that the younger generation's interest in literature is waning. Academics argue that educational policies have failed to encourage reading for pleasure, contributing to declining numbers of English literature students and a shift towards young adult books rather than classic novels. According to 2023 figures from the National Literacy Trust, the number of 8 to 18-year-olds who say they enjoy reading has sunk to its lowest level for almost 20 years, with a quarter fewer reading each day over that same time period. To share more with us about this topic, I'm joined now by the journalist Charlotte Lytton. Charlotte, welcome back. Lovely to talk to you again. Tell us your perspective on this issue. What is happening?
Well, speaking to academics, we can't deny, it seems, that there is a big problem here, and it starts right at school. As you read there, young children simply don't enjoy reading for pleasure as they did before. We can't deny that is also a massive part because of smartphones, because kids now are faced with all of these things vying for their attention. They just don't have to sit down and entertain themselves with a long book and nothing else as they did before. As we see from those figures with people going to study humanities at university, the decline is just going all the way because people simply are not interested in reading for pleasure as they were.
Do you get any feeling that education policy or that teachers are taking steps to counter this?
Well, there is a review of the curriculum going ahead right now, but school is a huge part of it. One of the things that has come up in this conversation is whether teachers now are dealing with crowd control, which means they can't simply encourage reading for pleasure because they're simply trying to get a hold of the students they have.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Time now for the head-to-head. And a damning report has claimed that the family of Sir Captain Tom Moore made over £1 million through their association with the charity set up in his name. So, according to the charity's watchdog, there was repeated instances of misconduct by the veteran's daughter, Hannah Ingram Moore, and her husband. This latest controversy puts the spotlight on how charities are run and how they're regulated, with the salaries of staff members and different diversity policies constantly coming under scrutiny in recent years. So, my big question tonight, is it time to toughen up on charities and get stricter with how they manage their finances? Let me know your thoughts by heading to gbnews.com/your say or tweet me at GBNews. Joining me now is criminal defence lawyer Paul Britton and barrister and writer Stephen Barrett. Good evening to you both. Thank you for joining me. Stephen, I'll start with you. What's your thoughts? Big charity, is it all a bit murky?
Well, we should be grateful that the Charity Commission did something, because actually they very seldom achieve an awful lot, to be perfectly honest. What's happened here is absolutely scandalous in a moral sense. And what's gone particularly wrong is that the Charity Commission seems to have reached the right conclusion, but then decided that it doesn't have the powers in law to actually fix anything. So it's been effectively begging these children of Captain Tom, and we mustn't ever besmirch Captain Tom. He's still a hero, and it's quite clear from the foreword to his first book that he thought that the monies were going to go to his charity. Yeah. So he's still a he's still an amazing man. But what's happened is the Charity Commission doesn't feel able to fix the problem. Well, then what is the Charity Commission for? You know, they've taken 1.5 million. They've taken some other monies as well. They've clearly benefited. I still don't know her actual name. I still know her as Captain Tom's daughter. Okay. And I think the idea that she's independently attractive or independently in demand is nonsense. Okay. And where are we with this?
Well, what about the wider situation, Paul, with charities in general? And I'm talking about massive corporate-style charities here, not independent charities or, you know, I'm not going to name them because I have to get comments from them, but I'm talking about the charities with CEOs on £300, £400, £500 salaries, where in some instances, reports from recent years, Full Facts did a report, in some instances, just 27% of donations from the generous British public go towards the actual cause.
Well, Ben, that's not been uncommon. That hasn't been uncommon for a long time. There was reports in the 90s and the noughties where...
Does that make it right?
Every pound that you give to charities, like a penny would end up going to the actual cause and the rest will be funding... Look, whether it's right or wrong, that's a different question. What Stephen is saying is that the Charity Commission hasn't done anything. That's not true. They have done something. They have disqualified these two individuals.
Well, let's talk what about the wider charity sector as opposed to just Captain Tom's
Well, look, the
charity.
Charities Commission has been around for a long time. We're talking over 100 years, right? And it has been modernised again and again and again. But they only have the powers that we give them, or the government gives them through legislation, to do certain things. We can't criticise the Charities Commission, who actually do a fabulous job at regulating those that they have to regulate. We can't criticise them and say they haven't done anything. They have done what they can do.
OK, Paul, what do you think about these charities where the percent of donations are very, very slim? In 2017, one charity up north, I'm not going to name it, they were found to be giving just 3%, just 27 grand of its total expenditure to the actual cause that it was raising money for. It raised over 800 grand and gave just 27 to the actual cause.
You're picking on one charity in isolation. And I've said to you, look, these charities, it doesn't cost nothing to run a charity. Obviously, money has to go in for the fundraising.
So you think 3%, for example, is a good return?
No, what you're saying is they shouldn't spend any money on getting more donations. Now, if we said there was 1%, of the money that you contribute goes to the cause. Well, in some cases, when they're raising hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds, it's still a lot of money going to the cause, but they wouldn't raise a penny if they couldn't raise their profile and get those donations in the first place.
So what's the minimum? Do we need a minimum figure to pass on donations? 3%? Is that
well,
okay with you?
It doesn't work like that. It all depends on...
Well, I'm asking you.
Well, I'm a criminal defence lawyer. I mean, I'm not. I don't run a charity.
Well, I'm asking for your opinion. Do you think 3% of total donations to the actual cause is good?
Well, Ben, look, I think that's a silly question to be asking me.
It's not. I'm asking you a question. Do you think 3% of charity donations to the actual cause
if it were that simple,
calling for is a decent amount to pass on?
Ben, it's simply not that simple. OK, you'd have to look at
Stephen, is 3% a good amount to pass on to needy causes?
No.
There we go.
And
it's not hard.
It really is that simple. If you're running on that basis, then you really oughtn't be a charity. That's a desperately inefficient use of money. That's obviously...
Paul, actually, I can't believe you're even refusing to answer that.
Which is exactly what the Charity Commission looks at. And if you read the report, and I've read the report, or every page of it, 35-page report, not a particularly long report. It is damning. It does find misappropriation of funds, misuse, abuse of position. Now, if you ask me about the criminal offences that they might have committed, then it's a much more sensible question to be asking a criminal defence lawyer. Under the Fraud Act, we've got Section 2, Section 3 and Section 4. One is fraud by misrepresentation, which clearly in the report indicates that they have done. There's others that are fraud by abuse of position. They are in a position of trust. They have clearly abused that position. And there's, so they're looking at if the police got hold of it and it went up to the CPS for prosecution, they could be looking up to 10 years in jail and an unlimited fine.
OK.
But what we're talking about is what the Charities Commission has done. They don't have the powers to impose those sort of penalties. That's
kind of the point of this discussion. Stephen, I'm asking, do we need new laws, maybe new regulatory powers to ensure that charities, I'm not just talking about Captain Tom's charity, charities in the UK should be passing on, for example, minimum amounts of donations?
Well, what we need is much simpler systems that actually work. So one of the great fallacies of the last 25 years is the idea that you just set up a regulator, everything will be fine, walk away, all of our problems are now fixed. And we have a number of broken regulators. On the Charity Commission's numbers, there are 900,000 trustees, and they've struck off 140. That's not, to my mind, I mean, sure, maybe all of those other people are entirely good people, but I'm going to suspect that there's actually quite a lot of...
Stephen, you can't make sweeping statements like that at all. About trustees.
I absolutely can.
Of course you can't.
Did.
I think they're doing... I mean, it's an outrageous thing to say.
In you.
You're just saying that everyone's dishonest. They've highlighted 140 people that they have disqualified, which just shows that the Charity Commission is working. It doesn't mean that there must be thousands of other dishonest people.
Stephen?
Yeah. I think that's just a ridiculous idea. What we're living in is a failed state bureaucracy that is slowly dying. Any of us who point out that it's breaking are sort of piled on and attacked. But this is just risible. If you want, I mean, you're quite right, Ben. Charities should not be spending 3% of the money that they're given on their actual activities.
How would you punish them, Stephen? How would you punish these people?
Close them down.
Which people?
It's not a charity, is it? If you're giving 3% of the donations from the generous British public who graft
and how
food on the table...
I'm afraid, Ben,
how do you want the Charities Commission to punish them? What powers would you give to the Charities Commission?
This rather rude gentleman's name, so I
Stephen Barrett.
Well, that's quite rude, isn't it, that you can't be bothered to see who you're on air with?
He is talking to council and he is wasting council's time with silly questions.
OK, Paul Britton, Stephen Barrett. Paul, just one last opportunity. Go on. You think 3% is an acceptable amount to pass on?
Listen, Ben, obviously...
Yes or no? Come on.
Let me answer the question. Under what you're saying, if they made £100 million and they gave 3% to the cause,
that sounds like
not
a scam
acceptable
to me.
On those
that sounds
figures.
Like a Ponzi
how many
scheme.
examples have you got of that, of how many charities there are?
I've got one here, but I'm not going to name them because I don't want to get a comment.
It's like tarring them all with the same brush, and you just can't do that.
OK, all right. Stephen Barrett, Paul Britton, thank you for joining me this evening. Appreciate the debate. Interesting. Let me know what you think about that. gbnews.com/you'll say. Do we need a minimum amount that charities need to spend on the actual cause they're raising money for? In response to this story, the Ingram-Moore family have said in a statement, we remain dedicated to upholding Captain Sir Tom Moore's legacy and want the public to know there has never been any misappropriation of funds or unauthorised payments from the charity's bank account by any member of our family. OK, there we go. Coming up, Essex Police have dropped their investigation into the Telegraph journalist Alison Pearson. I'll discuss that revelation with my panel next. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The snow and ice risk continues this evening and overnight, and it is going to remain cold before we introduce unsettled weather over the weekend as Storm Bert moves its way in from the west. For the time being, though, we remain in this cold northerly Arctic flow, bringing us that snow and ice risk, so still plenty of snow showers feeding their way in, mainly across northern coast of Scotland, a few feeding into northern coast of Northern Ireland, northwest England and northern parts of Wales, though some may feed inland at times. Where we see the clear skies overnight, that's where we're expecting quite a sharp frost and some patches of ice too. So do take care if you're out and about during early Friday morning. So the showers are set to continue around coastal areas of Scotland, though some may feed inland at times with a brisk northerly flow pushing them inland. Mainly falling as snow over high ground, though likely to see some flurries to lower levels too. A few showers feeding into northern coast of Northern Ireland, northwest England and northern parts of Wales too, so still a snow risk here. But otherwise there'll be plenty of bright sunshine to start on Friday, but still feeling particularly chilly and with those icy stretches too. So otherwise, for Friday, it's going to be a mix once again of those wintry showers and some bright sunshine. Showers mainly feeding into northwestern coasts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England and northern parts of Wales. These heavy at times and turning to sleet and snow, mainly above high ground, but once again could fall to lower levels too. Elsewhere, plenty of autumnal sunshine, but once again it is going to be feeling chilly for this time in November. As we head into Saturday, unsettled weather as Storm Bert moves its way in from the west. Heavy outbreaks of rain, this falling to snow at times in the north and strong winds across parts of Scotland too. And we do have an amber snow and ice warning issued for parts of Scotland, so do stay up to date to our forecasts. So an unsettled weekend ahead. Otherwise, that is it from me. Bye-bye for now.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello, welcome back. This is Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News with me, Ben Leo. Now, some good news. Essex Police have dropped the investigation into Telegraph journalist Alison Pearson at last. In a statement, the force said, "We investigate crimes reported to us without fear or favour. We're sometimes faced with allegations of crime where people have strong opposing views. That's why we work so hard to remain impartial and to investigate allegations regardless of where they might lead. So was this whole sorry business just a total waste of police time and money? Or, Suzanne Evans, was it justified? Should we be policing words on social media?
It was a complete waste of time and money. What were Essex police thinking? Going after a respected journalist like Alison Pearson for a tweet that was a year old, so it'd been there for a year, and she deleted it. The whole thing was the most dystopian, insane thing I've seen in a very long time. And I'm so proud that it was Alison Pearson they picked on, because that woman's got a spine made of absolute steel, and there was no way she was going to back down. And of course, she's been proved right. What I feel sorry for is the people that don't have her public profile, her platform, or her bottle, who have been hounded by the police in very similar situations. We know from the Free Speech Union and the work they've done, 65 non-crime hate incidents reported, investigated every day. It's absolutely insane. It's not the kind of thing we should be seeing in this country. You'd expect it in communist China, you'd expect it in North Korea. It shouldn't be happening in Britain. And frankly, I think Essex police, the way they've behaved, in my opinion, they've been an absolute disgrace. I hope they give her a fulsome apology and change the way they operate.
Yeah, Sean, The Times did a piece a week or so ago saying that there was something like 11,000 non-crime hate incidents dished out over the past 12 months. So my point tonight is, well done, Alison. As you said, Suzanne, you've got a platform to fight back, and I'm glad that she's finally got some peace. But thousands of other people who don't have the same capacity to fight this nonsense.
There's three things I'd say. Firstly, in the House of Lords, we had a debate on this, and I was pleasantly surprised at how many Labour peers and crossbenchers came out against this nonsense, because it is nonsense. The other point to make as well is this is damaging to the reputation of the police. There's people at home now thinking, well, I've been burgled, where were you then? There's people at home who've continually talking about two-tier policing. I've spoken to the police, they absolutely hate the term two-tier. But the problem is, it always seems to be people on the right. And the evidence is piling up and piling up and piling up. And the police are now having to run around denigrating their own reputation because of silly things that's happened in the law. What politics needs to do is remove these legally so the police can take them off the priority list. Because while they have the priority list, the police are at risk of looking idiotic, which is damaging for all of us, because a police service without authority means that we're all unsafe.
The clue is in the name, non-crime. Non-crime. The police should not be investigating non-crime.
Matthew, do you think this is a left-right thing? Can you sympathise with the argument that it's two-tier policing?
I can sympathise with people's perception of that. I'm not sure. I mean, the reality is, I hope anybody from wherever their political viewpoint, if they actually do commit a crime online, that needs to be investigated as a crime. But as Suzanne said, the clue's in the title, the non-crime hate incident. So I have less of a problem than quite a lot of people with the prosecutions that happened after the riots, when people were saying, and I paraphrase, but, turn up at this hotel, let's go get them. Again, I'm just paraphrasing there. That is completely different to our Alison, who I've disagreed with on this sofa many times, but who is clearly not committing a crime. And what's extraordinary is, it's not just Essex Police. 3 police forces were involved in this.
Sussex.
I've never quite understood why Sussex were involved. I mean, did somebody in Sussex read it and not like it?
Not me.
No, I was going to say...
But that's the point, isn't it? The other thing that people might not appreciate, I could tweet against you, Ben, and somebody else completely outside of it can decide that it's a crime, and you might not even be offended. That is ridiculous.
Can we talk about free speech? Is there a limit to free speech? Because I'm someone would call a free speech absolutist, where I think you should be able to say anything you want, even the most disgusting, vile things, and I don't think the police should be able to get involved for words.
I'm very much in favour of free speech, but yes, there has to be a limit.
What is the limit? And who
incitement
to
violence, to start with. Incitement of a crime. I mean, a genuine crime, not talking about non-crime, talking about genuine crimes.
They're already illegal.
Exactly.
We didn't need these rules. And the other piece that people may not appreciate is there are children who are being investigated to these things in school. Now, let's be clear. If an 11-year-old boy or 13-year-old girl, whoever it is, says something seriously offensive, it should never involve the police.
So what were the examples from, was it last week? Somebody called a classmate a disparaging word beginning with R, ending with D, to do with intellect, and
a 9-year-old.
One that made me laugh, a 9-year-old said another girl smelled like fish, and the police turned up.
That for me, it just makes the police look ridiculous. Somebody has to rescue the police from this position.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, because the police, it's absolutely right that they investigate crimes that happen, whether they happen online or they happen IRL, in real life, as the terminology goes, but they can't be be investigating non-crime incidents when at a time when they don't turn up to a lot of burglaries. And I think that's not a left-right thing, it's a common sense thing.
What do you think Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, thinks of all this? I know he said the other day that police need to focus on policing, but do you think he's more, say, authoritarian?
I would love to be a fly on the wall, because I rather wonder if there was a call from the Home Office just to remind the Essex Police of their priorities. Tell you what I get is these police and crime commissioners who, in my view, should be scrapped. These are the elected people. When I worked for the Labour Party, it was our policy to scrap them. It's got more complicated because it's been folded into the mayors in a lot of places. But these police and crime commissioners, whether they're Labour or Tory, all they are is a mouthpiece for the police. They don't do it, and they all have deputies, and it costs hundreds of thousands. We were going to put the money back into frontline policing. I think that should still be a policy.
So it's interesting about Keir Starmer. So Number 10 originally came out and defended Essex Police, and then Keir Starmer seemed to backtrack. And it was interesting. I was just looking through X, as it's now called, looking for a tweet, and I found a different one about Keir Starmer apologising that he hadn't intended to cause offence when he'd said something about a Bangladeshi community. Well, Keir, I've got news for you. Now it seems that a lot of people who you work with in a lot of police forces want to prosecute people for apparently causing offence.
Call the cops who's had them help you out at Downing Street.
You have to take offence.
Keir Starmer failed here. He is the Prime Minister. A, he could actually do something about this in Parliament, and B, a steer from him would have been important.
Well, maybe what you say is cross-party something will happen.
There would have been police officers across the country who would have responded to something from the Prime Minister.
Absolutely.
Do you think someone, very last word, do you think someone did give a call to the Home Office, Sean?
I'd like to believe somebody. I'd like to believe common sense prevailed from Number 10. That'd make me feel
This snooping started in COVID as well. It started in COVID when the government was actively encouraging people to grass up their neighbours. It's got to stop.
Yeah, curtain twitchers. Right, in a statement given to GB News, Alison Pearson has said, "I'm hugely relieved that Essex Police have come to their senses. It's scary and upsetting for a law-abiding, decent person to face an accusation of stirring up racial hatred. What my case has revealed is the appalling overuse of non-crime hate incidents to silence opinions that everyone down the pub would think were completely normal. Free speech is a precious part of the British identity. I hope we can now agree the police should spend time catching criminals, not believing complaints from random people that they have been offended, or who have been offended." OK, coming up, farmers are warning of a mental health crisis hitting rural communities following Labour's announcement of the family farms tax. I'll be asking Anne Widdecombe about that and much, much more, including the death of John Prescott. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Joined by international life coach Cheryl Findlay, who has joined forces with a Liverpool business owner, Kate Hill, of sustainable sportswear brand Lola Star, to empower women and inspire women across the nation. And to celebrate this partnership with the new Lola Star collection, the two will be hosting an exclusive event next Saturday.
The brand was launched after, well, your story. You lost how much weight?
So 16 stone, which is over £220, which I know is quite significant. But during that kind of decade-long journey, I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about what it takes to be successful, to be happy, to be well, and to just live an incredible life every day.
Are you giving them goals to work towards or helping them structure their life?
Yeah, so I don't give out goals, absolutely not. It's all about whatever an individual wants. So what we do to begin with is we understand, like, where are you now? Where are you thriving? Where do you feel really happy and excited in your life? And what's lacking? Like, where would you like to feel better? Where would you like to improve? And then we take it from there.
I'd love to take that on board. I'd love to be my true self and fulfil my potential. So have you got any practical tips on how to do that?
Yeah, so we start with clarity, right? Like, you need to know, it's such a busy, fast-paced world we live in. There's so much sensory overload. You know, it'd be so easy to be distracted. So we need to kind of quiet all that noise down and start with, where do I want to focus? Pick 2 or 3 things. Where do I want to focus? And then we define the goal. What would I like that area of my life to look, not just look like, but feel like? And then we take it from there. So that's where you would start. I actually had a cancer diagnosis in 2019. And I just decided if I was going to be lucky enough to be on the other side of it, I wasn't going to play small anymore.
GB News, the people's...
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to Patrick Christys. Tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Now, tributes have been pouring in today across the political spectrum following the passing of the former Deputy Prime Minister, Lord Prescott. Lord Prescott served as Tony Blair's Deputy PM for 10 years, of course, between 1997 and 2007, and was one of the most prominent politicians of the new Labour era. Mr Blair paid tribute to his old colleague today, saying he was devastated at his death, adding there was no one quite like him in British politics. Joining me now to discuss Prescott's legacy is the Immigration and Justice spokeswoman for Reform UK, Anne Widdecombe. Good evening, Anne. Your memories and your thoughts of John Prescott. He was a character, indeed.
He was a character, but he was much more than that. He was very, very important to the Blair project because Blair had to keep the unions on side and old Labour on side, while Blair, was being seen as effectively embracing Tory policies and becoming Tory Mark II. And therefore, he did rely on John Prescott, the Deputy Prime Minister. He did rely on him to keep that side of the Labour Party happy, and he did. Now, he had a ferocious temper, there's no doubt about that, but he was a very, very kind man underneath that. And I remember he managed very complicated things like the Channel Tunnel Railway, for example, when he was Transport Secretary. He managed it with finesse and with a lot of hard work. So yeah, he was a great man.
And of course, we can't talk about John Prescott without mentioning the infamous punch in 2001. I think you were, correct me if I'm wrong, Anne, were you Shadow Home Secretary at the time?
Yes, I was. Yes, I was.
I was reading today, I think the Tories were something like 30 points behind in the polls at the time of that jab. What was the reaction from Tory HQ and your party at the time? Did you think that he'd sort of blown it?
We were quite pleased. That's quite true. We thought that he had made a very serious error. We called for a prosecution. We did all those things, and it was one of several things that turned ugly for Labour at that time. It wasn't just that. But that was a very Prescott reaction. I mean, somebody had hurled something at him, and he turned around and responded. And, a lot of people would say, well, maybe that was just self-defence. But yeah, we did make hay with it at the time. Of course we did. We were the opposition.
Yeah, and I think amongst other things in his life, I think when he discovered his telephone had been hacked by the News of the World, he became a resolute campaigner for press regulation as well, although he did go on to become a columnist for the Daily Mirror. And let me ask you about this Jaguar rebrand. Have you heard about this? They've completely...
the advert that doesn't have a car in it.
What do you make of this, Anne? Why have they done it?
Well, I think they've got some frightfully bright whiz kid who, doesn't really have a lot of common sense. I mean, if you're going to, advertise something, people do want to see what it is. I mean, try advertising Mars bars without the Mars bars.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. But I understand their embarrassment because apparently it's an electric car and nobody likes electric cars.
Yeah, and it was quite weird actually. Last night when we were talking about this Jaguar story, I hadn't known that John Prescott had died. I think he died maybe in the early hours, or at least it was announced in the early hours. And I was going to say at the end of the segment, I was going to say John Prescott would be turning in his grave, but in my head, I thought it in my head at the time, don't say that because he's not dead. So I said something like, oh, John Prescott would be fuming. And then hours later, it was announced that he sadly passed away. So it was very strange. Just finally, Anne, we're running out of time, but farmers' mental health has come up in the wake of all this inheritance tax raid. Charities are warning of worsening mental health conditions in farmers over the past few years, even before the budget was announced. Do we need to give any sort of special attention to farmers, especially in the wake of this tax raid?
Well, you know that I always resist describing stress as a mental health issue. And farmers have been stressed for years, and they've had a raw deal for years. And I think that what this is just, if you like, the last straw, the straw that will break the camel's back. And I think the government seriously needs to rethink.
Yeah, I think figures I dug out earlier, 472,000 odd people work in farming in the UK. That's a mere 1% of the population, or around about that. But agriculture accounts for 16% of all deaths in the workplace. I mean, it's a very dangerous job. They're up from the crack of dawn till dusk. Do you think Labour are going to have to U-turn on this?
Well, I think they should U-turn on it, but let's face it, they haven't U-turned on the old folks' fuel allowance, have they? And I mean, the pressure for that has been huge and coming from all sides. So they, at the moment, I think they're arrogant. They've got a majority that enables them to do anything they like. And at the moment, the new MPs aren't really prepared to rebel. So I think they just go ahead and do what they want to do. But I do predict that they won't get away with this sort of thing in a couple of years' time. You know, people will be saying, well, don't just assume that you're God Almighty.
Yeah, and I just don't know why they're doing it either. Apparently, it's only going to raise around £560 million for the Treasury. So the risk-reward of introducing the policy is... Why are they doing it if not for the money? It doesn't seem like it's for the money.
Well, I can't see that it's for the money. I mean, you know, a measly £500 million. I mean, you know, what's that in terms probably, you know, just a very tiny fraction of 1% of, you know, of GDP. It's pathetic.
Yeah, OK.
So no, it won't be for the money. It won't be for the money. It's because they don't like inheritance.
Yeah. OK. Anne Widdecombe, thank you for joining me. Always a pleasure. Great to see you. Enjoy your evening. Lots more coming up, including a terrorist who plans to bomb the London Stock Exchange could be released in January. More of that in just a tick. I'm Ben Leo, covering for Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The snow and ice risk continues this evening and overnight, and it is going to remain cold before we introduce unsettled weather over the weekend as Storm Bert moves its way in from the west. For the time being, though, we remain in this cold northerly Arctic flow, bringing us that snow and ice risk. So still plenty of snow showers feeding their way in, mainly across northern coast of Scotland, a few feeding into northern coast of Northern Ireland, northwest England and northern parts of Wales, though some may feed inland at times. Where we see the clear skies overnight, that's where we're expecting quite a sharp frost and some patches of ice too. So do take care if you're out and about during early Friday morning. So the showers are set to continue around coastal areas of Scotland, though some may feed inland at times with a brisk northerly flow pushing them inland. Mainly falling as snow over high ground, though likely to see some flurries to lower levels too. A few showers feeding into northern coast of Northern Ireland, northwest England and northern parts of Wales too. So still a snow risk here. But otherwise there'll be plenty of bright sunshine to start on Friday, but still feeling particularly chilly and with those icy stretches too. So otherwise, for Friday, it's going to be a mix once again of those wintry showers and some bright sunshine. Showers mainly feeding into northwestern coasts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England and northern parts of Wales. These heavy at times and turning to sleet and snow, mainly above high ground, but once again could fall to lower levels too. Elsewhere, plenty of autumnal sunshine, but once again it is going to be feeling chilly for this time in November. As we head into Saturday, unsettled weather as Storm Bert moves its way in from the west. Heavy outbreaks of rain, this falling to snow at times in the north and strong winds across parts of Scotland too. And we do have an amber snow and ice warning issued for parts of Scotland, so do stay up to date to our forecasts. So an unsettled weekend ahead. Otherwise, that is it from me. Bye-bye for now.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win Christmas on Us this year. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag will get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2 or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo. A GB News exclusive. A terrorist who plotted to blow up London could be walking free in January. Meanwhile, a bloke who sold illegal Premier League streams is given 3 years in the slammer. I'll reveal the grim details next. Also tonight, arrest warrants for Israeli PM Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defence minister are issued by the International Criminal Court and staggeringly backed by Keir Starmer's government. So has Britain betrayed Israel during its time of need? And
I have to say that the real Logan Paul looks very different. Did you come all over here to ask about how I look? Is Logan coming? I'm right here, bud.
The BBC flew 6,000 miles to interview a YouTube star, but not was all as it seemed. I'll share with you perhaps one of the greatest examples of trolling ever. Tomorrow's newspaper front pages are minutes away too, and tonight's panel are ready to go. I'm joined by political consultant Suzanne Evans, Conservative peer Lord Bailey, and former Labour advisor Matthew Larser. And farewell to a political juggernaut. A Britain-hating terrorist who wanted to blow up London could be released in a matter of weeks. First, your news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Ben, thank you. It's just gone 10 o'clock. These are your headlines. Russian President Vladimir Putin has threatened to strike the UK with a new ballistic missile after using the weapon to hit a target in Ukraine. Downing Street condemned Mr. Putin for further escalating the conflict by using a ballistic missile with a range of several thousand kilometres against the city of Dnipro. Mr. Putin confirmed Russia has tested a new intermediate-range weapon, saying it came in response to Ukrainian strikes on the Russian territory with US and British missiles earlier this week. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for the leader of Hamas, as well as Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the country's former Defence Minister Yoav Gallant. They say these warrants are as a result of alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity. In response, an Israeli foreign minister has said the ICC has, quote, lost all legitimacy with their ruling on Netanyahu and Gallant. Meanwhile, a Hamas senior official has told Reuters news agency that these warrants are an important step towards justice. The King has paid a warm personal tribute to Lord John Prescott, saying he remembered with great fondness his unique and indomitable character and infectious sense of humour. King Charles hailed the former Deputy Prime Minister, who has died at the age of 86, for his decades of public service in frontline politics. His family said he'd spent his life trying to improve the lives of others, fighting for social justice and protecting the environment. In other news, journalist Alison Pearson has told GB News she is hugely relieved that Essex Police has dropped its investigation into her tweets. Ms Pearson was being investigated for allegedly stirring up racial hatred with a social media post made in November of last year. But the force now says no charges will be brought, having sought advice from the Crown Prosecution Service. Ms Pearson says her case has revealed the appalling overuse of non-crime hate incidents to silence opinions. To the US now, where Donald Trump ally Matt Gaetz has withdrawn his name from consideration to be the next US Attorney General after days of debate over whether to release a report on alleged sexual misconduct and drug use. Posting on X, the 42-year-old said that the controversy over his potential nomination was unfairly becoming a distraction to the work of the incoming Trump administration. And the daughter of Captain Sir Tom Moore and her husband have been accused of repeated misconduct following a report carried out by the Charity Commission. The investigation found a misleading implication that donations from book sales would be made to the Captain Tom Foundation, an amount totalling almost £1.5 million. Commenting on the report, the family has described it as unjust and excessive, adding that they, quote, never took a penny from the public donations raised by Captain Tom. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Ben.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. Here's another GB News exclusive for you. A terrorist convicted of planning to bomb the London Stock Exchange could soon be out on the streets. Shah Rahman was one of 4 al-Qaeda-inspired British extremists who plotted to cause death and destruction in the capital in 2012. A handwritten target list discovered by cops at the home of one of his accomplices showed the names and addresses of the then London Mayor Boris Johnson, the Stock Exchange, 2 rabbis and even the US Embassy. Rahman was jailed for 12 years in 2012, but released on licence in 2017. He was considered a key member of the group and just hours before he was arrested, had been overheard going through details on how to construct a pipe bomb. He was jailed again in 2022 for breaching licence conditions after police discovered he had a secret bank account. But despite his clear hatred for Britain and for breaching his bail conditions again, Rahman has a parole hearing coming up in January, in just a few weeks, where he could once again be given the green light to roam the streets of Britain. And it's looking fairly likely that will be the case too. His behaviour in prison has been described as, quote-unquote, positive. Colonel Richard Kemp, a terrorism expert and the British Army's former commander in Afghanistan, said, "This is shocking. He is clearly a very dangerous individual. The potential harm to the country this person has is enormous." Meanwhile, while this is all going on, we're packing our prisons with people like Jonathan Edge, a man who got sentenced to 3 years in prison last week for, get this, flogging illegal streams to Premier League football games. So let's get the thoughts of my panel tonight. Political consultant Suzanne Evans, Conservative peer Lord Bailey and the former Labour advisor Matthew Laza. Welcome back, panel. Suzanne Evans, are we a soft touch in Britain when it comes to justice? And do, for example, terrorists, should they be just given life without parole?
Yeah, I think so. I really do. I mean, this is a very dangerous man. He was originally jailed for 12 years, which seems to me not long enough when you're plotting to blow up a city, its mayor, rabbis, the US Embassy, so on and so forth. 12 years for that? Seriously? I'd have thought that should be worth a life sentence. Then, of course, he was let out, as was, let's not forget, his partner in crime, a man called Osman Khan, who was also freed on licence for the same offence, and then a year later killed 2 people in the London Bridge attack before he was shot dead by police.
Was that the 2017 London Bridge
That was 2018 one. 2018, December 2018. Now, I don't think either of those men, frankly, should have been let out of prison. But arguably, he's now served his time. And I also feel strongly we can't keep people locked up for longer than their sentence. If that's their sentence, they have a right to be freed. So I'm really torn on this one. I think the law is an ass for not putting him away forever, frankly. And I also think it's a bit of an ass for letting him out.
Yeah, Sean, I think he even wanted to blow up my favourite nightclub at the time, Ministry of Sound, which would have been an absolute travesty.
That would have been a...
but at a time when we are releasing paedophiles because the prisons are full and we're releasing very serious criminals, I just think anybody who is convicted of wanting to blow up British people on the streets of this country should be banged away for life. I don't know why they have parole hearings.
But let's look at this properly. They're two separate issues. That's about the bulk of people in prison. This is a particularly bad individual. So let's be different. And let's be clear, they haven't released him yet. Now, when we have this conversation in February, if they've released him, it's a whole different thing. Running the parole board is very difficult because they have to weigh up what we would all call natural justice. Innocent until proven guilty. Once you've done your tariff, you've answered your crime, but they've also got to look at the level of danger he presents to the public, because last time they didn't release him because of his secret bank account. That was enough, and they were worried about him. So let's see what they do now. But the overarching piece is we must not become them. If we start banging up people with no recourse to justice, we become them. That's what they want. They would win.
But I would argue that they have had justice. They went to trial in court. They were given a sentence. They were proven to have done the crimes that they were accused of. That is justice, isn't it?
Yeah, and then you could then argue, well, they've served that term. So therefore, the completion of that justice would be to release them. Would I release them? No, because I think they're dangerous. But should we put them through the system? Yes, we should. And you've got to give the parole board the room to make the proper decision. What we often do with parole, we pile on so much heat, it becomes a political environment, not a legal environment, not a professional environment. And let's see if they release him or not. His behaviour in prison is one thing. Yeah, it may be positive, but the bottom line is he presented himself as a huge danger to us all. They could potentially keep him.
Matthew Larson, would you feel comfortable living next to this bloke if he moved in next door to you?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I used to live opposite the Ministry of Sound, so...
Are you a regular?
Yeah, I'm not as cool as you. I think the issue here is there may well be a question about the original sentence. And if the tariff that is in legislation for terrorism isn't enough, then we need to look at that. Once somebody has been convicted, you have to let the system treat everybody the same, and that doesn't mean that they should be let out. It means that the parole board should make that proper assessment. It's incredibly difficult decisions they make. I, for one, would not want to be on the parole board, but you know, I think in this case, I rather suspect there may be reasons why they don't. But I think it has to be treated, as Sean says, the rules have to apply. Perhaps originally he should have been sent down for longer.
The other point I'd make, they're not just going to release him and say, away you go, chum. They're going to watch him. If you saw what happened last time, he was released and they found out about his secret bank account. That's because they were observing him, they were watching him. And we do have to look at some of the things here that have worked. The police caught them in the first place. They went to court, they were given a sentence, and then when they were released, they were watched. But we often focus on what's gone wrong, which hasn't happened yet, but they also is a system that it does work.
The difference, Sean, is that this time he won't be released on licence, he'll be released full stop. The reason they were watching him last time was because he was still on licence, so he was still having to report to his parole officer and all the rest of it. That's not going to be happening this time,
my understanding is for an offence of this nature, he will still be watched.
Well, I hope so.
Because of terrorism, not under the licence conditions, but as a terrorism
exactly,
suspect.
as Matthew says, under the terrorism situation, not the licence system. They will not just set him free.
So MI5 would keep tabs on him. But
Absolutely.
I mean, again, I argue, why do we need to waste money? Security services, they're strapped anyway. I think I saw some stats the other year or the other month about how there's only one intelligence agent per 500 terrorist suspects in the UK. He's having to keep tabs on them the whole time. So I'd argue, why don't we save money for MI5 and the intelligence services by just keeping this guy in prison?
It might not be any cheaper.
The other thing that worries me, of course, is we live in this climate now where our prisons are at capacity and they're full, and we know that the government has been letting out some of the most heinous criminals, and I think parole boards are going to be under pressure to create and free up more prison spaces, and that worries me, that parole boards will be making decisions based on political edicts as opposed to actually whether or not someone is a danger to society.
Although I think that's a possibility, not in this case. You've got to remember the risk for the parole board of this going sideways is enormous.
Is it?
And
What? I mean, that's an interesting question. If a parole board gets it wrong, I don't think there's any comeback on that.
Well, they get a very heavy criticism and sometimes calls for resignation.
But you've got to understand,
there's no responsibility.
but for the parole board, that's important. Their legitimacy comes from the fact that we support them. They do not want to get that wrong.
But does it ever go wrong? Can you think? I can't think of any examples.
There have been some examples. I mean, there have been.
Have you got examples, Matthew?
I can't remember what's but I did remember. I heard a really fascinating interview with somebody who was who was chaired some of these parole boards, and so, the thinking that goes into it. The decisions aren't taken lightly. I think you're absolutely right, Sean. We have to defend the independence of the parole board, and I hope that there, not just in this case, but generally there isn't political pressure. Hopefully, we get sentencing sorted out. We send in the right people to prison for sentences that work, and then the parole board is independent.
But you know that there are absolutely dozens. This is just an isolated case. There are dozens of these types of people, terrorists, people who are plotting to blow up this, that, and the other. Suzanne, can these types of people be rehabilitated?
No, you can't really.
Can you rid them of that ideology?
If you're talking about somebody who is, for this example, rooted in a hardline Islamist terrorist ideology,
and they're British as well, by the way,
and they're British, so you can't deport them either. Then you can't really argue with that. They've effectively been, I don't like the term brainwashed, but that's the closest term I can think of. You can't talk somebody out of that. It's very, very difficult. So I think they're always going to be a danger.
Sean, can you rehabilitate terrorists?
If I had to say yes or no, I'd probably say no. A few weeks hanging around with some right-on people who believe, a little cognitive behaviour therapy, and you'll drop your whole life's beliefs, I think is nonsense. I think the London Bridge attacks illustrated that quite aptly. So. But the bottom line is we have a legal system that we all believe in. Now, I go back to Matthew's point, which I think is correct. Was 12 years enough? But do we want to get to the point where we have a Guantanamo Bay, where we're locking up people because we think they might do something? That, to me, sounds like tyranny.
Absolutely, that is tyranny.
Maybe not just for suspicion, but I think certainly in cases where it's nailed on and they've been convicted.
Well, right, just now, that's suspicion. In this particular case, it's a feeling that he'll do something.
I think you can rehabilitate anybody, potentially, but obviously, it depends what base you're starting from. If you're starting a base of somebody seeped in an ideology, which has caused them to plot terrorism, then that's a flipping hard job to rehabilitate.
We do know there are Islamists who have repented and they've gone on to be very anti it and to work with young Muslims to try and prevent them getting into this kind of thing in the first place. But that's something that comes from within. It's not something you can force on somebody else.
It's not something you can teach people. Let's be clear. This individual was prepared to kill people.
Yeah.
It's not someone who's a bit annoyed because they think British.
It's not somebody sent a tweet.
This is a guy who was going to murder. I think he's got a long journey there.
All right, and his mate did.
Yeah,
indeed. The parole board said this in a statement. An all hearing has been listed for the parole review of Shah Rahman and is scheduled to take place in January 2025. Parole board decisions are solely focused on what risk a prisoner could represent to the public if released and whether that risk is manageable in the community. A panel will carefully examine a huge range of evidence, including details of the original crime and any evidence of behaviour change, as well as explore the harm done and impact the crime has had on the victims. Parole reviews are undertaken thoroughly and with extreme care. Protecting the public is our #1 priority. I don't know if you guys have seen that. I'm not sure what channel it's on. I caught a glimpse of it. My wife was watching it. It's about the parole board, and they show the interviews of prisoners who are hoping for parole. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't. It sounds interesting.
It is really fascinating. There's a panel of 3 or 4 people, and they go through the decisions.
It's an unenviable task.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think it's fascinating. I'd love to do it.
Yeah, as a parole board member.
Absolutely.
Yeah, me too. I did.
I did youth work for years, and I've met so many different people, so many different backgrounds, and watched them develop and move one way or the other. I find it fascinating.
I think you'd be brilliant.
Yeah, you'd have a good intuition for it, I think. OK, great discussion, fascinating. Let us know what you think. gbnews.com/you'll say. Lots more to come, but first, it's the final week of our Christmas giveaway, and we're on to the countdown to the big day. You could win £25,025 in tax-free cash, shopping vouchers, and GB News Christmas goodies too. Lucky you. But hurry, as time is running out. Here's all the details you need to win.
Just 34 days until Christmas, and it's the final week to see how you could enjoy it on us. That's £20,025 in tax-free cash to make 2025 fantastic. £5,000 to spend on gifts for all of the family. £500 in vouchers to buy a slap-up Christmas lunch at your favourite supermarket. And finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. Plus, we're going to get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2 or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
OK, very good luck. Have you guys done your Christmas shopping yet?
Oh, no, I haven't started.
A little bit.
No.
I do mine the day before, like 23rd.
Yes. And the sales are on.
Same as me, same as me. All right, coming up, the ICC have today issued arrest warrants for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the country's former defence minister, as well as, crucially, a Hamas commander, gone all American there. I'll be joined by a top lawyer who's part of the International Bar War Crimes Committee to find out what's happening. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, back in the tea.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The number of pubs may reach critically low levels.
Absolutely. So what we're seeing is a decline in the number of pubs in Britain, and it's fallen. This is an absolutely astonishing figure. So it's basically fallen 10% in a decade. So do our maths. It doesn't take very long for that to happen. So if that carries on, we'd have, get this, only 1,000 pubs by 2074. So the big question is, what will become extinct first? The bank branch on your high street, or the pub on your street corner? And this is a kind of perfect storm for landlords and landladies of, the cost of labour. We remember when the energy prices were at the high, we just realised just how much energy it keeps to keep the lights on in the local boozer. Yeah. As well as, as the cost of the golden nectar itself. So, as they call it in Australia.
Well, talking about that, I was mentioning the other day to, was it my father-in-law? I said, when I first started going to the pub, I was 15,
Okay.
Half a lemonade, half a shandy.
I was nearly 16, I got half a shandy. No, we used to have Monday Club, where a pint of Foster's was £1.50. And my father-in-law was saying, I went to London the other day, a pint was £8.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
And when you've got those kind of prices, why wouldn't you just go down the supermarket and get 16 tinnies for £5?
So you're going all Aussie now. Put the tinnies in the esky before you have the bar bit.
Good day, mate. Why not?
Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree, actually. I think it's concerning. A lot of people look at the high streets and they're very concerned that it's looking quite glum, to be honest. Lots of things are closing. But the reality is it's because people are not buying from the high street. They're not going to the pub, People are just deciding, what they're going to do in their spare time. Are they really going to go to the pub, or are they going to potentially go to, David Lloyd or a Nuffield, join a gym membership? They're just looking at their expenses and just deciding, you know what, we're going to actually cut costs,
GB News, the People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to Patrick Christys. Tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Now, you may have seen today the ICC has issued an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for alleged war crimes during the ongoing Gaza war. It's a seismic move, and it marks the first time the courts has charged the leader of a Western-allied democracy in its history. Netanyahu's office has rejected the, quote, false and absurd charges and called the decision anti-Semitic. Sir Keir Starmer, though, has, a short time ago, backed the International Criminal Court's decision. I'm delighted to be joined now by the Vice Chair of the International Bar War Crimes Committee, Elizabeth. How are you doing? Elizabeth Dill. Welcome. Thank you for joining me this evening. So, look, just can we break this down in layman's terms? What does this mean? If Netanyahu arrives into the UK and touches down in London, are our police forces going to arrest him? How's it going to work?
So because the UK is a state party to the Rome Statute, they do have obligations to comply with the issuance of arrest warrants and to arrest those, both Netanyahu, Gallant, but also the Hamas leader, who's presumed to be dead, but the court said they did not have confirmation. There is the 2001 International Criminal Court Act in the UK, which sets out the provisions by which UK courts decide if they will comply with it. And in other cases, the UK has stated, for example, the Russia case, they have stated that state parties to the International Criminal Court should comply with the arrest warrant and arrest anyone who is wanted by the court who lands within their jurisdiction. So the answer to that is yes, we could potentially arrest him if he lands in London? As their legal obligation, yes. Do you think that would happen, though, practically? I don't believe that Netanyahu would risk coming to the United Kingdom or any of the other 124 state parties to the Rome Statute. He's already cancelled a trip to the Netherlands next week. But we saw this the same when they issued the arrest warrants for Putin for the crimes committed against children. He cancelled a number of his international travels as well. And I think the Dutch have said today that they would arrest Netanyahu if he went to the Netherlands, is that right? So Joseph Borrell, the head of the EU, announced that he felt that all EU states should comply with this. A few states prior to the issuance of the arrest warrants, when they were simply applications, indicated that they would comply with that. And I think given that the Netherlands is the state in which The Hague sits and where the International Criminal Court is, you would expect them to comply with the arrest warrant. And just so we're clear, the US isn't a part of this court, is it? No, they never... Why don't they like it? Why don't they want to be a part of it? It's a very interesting history that the US actually was on board. They were part of the negotiations of the Rome Statute, and but then when in the election time it switched and they withdrew their support of the court. They've provided extensive financial support. They provided logistical support, investigative support to the court, extensive cooperations in the Russia prosecutions, and very in favour. Many statements from politicians on both sides of the aisle that they felt that any state should arrest Putin. They were critical when states did not do so. And so it has created a bit of double standard in the law in terms of it's a legitimate court in some circumstances, but not others, in their opinion. I mean, I don't quite understand how we got to this point where Israel is subject to the worst atrocity since the Holocaust, and then this government decides to impose partial arms embargoes, and now comes out today backing this ruling from what some critics would say is a bit of an irrelevant court. Is there any particular incident in the ruling from the court about Israel's behaviour? Is there a particular bombing or some particular behaviour, or is it just the whole campaign against Hamas? Well, I'll disagree with your characterisation as to what happened in the circumstances. There are allegations of war crimes and crimes against humanity on both sides, both against Israel and against Hamas. The charges against Hamas obviously stem from murder, rape, and the hostages, which is the primary thing, which I think is significant for the families of the hostages, that there is this step that they can feel there is an attempt at justice and accountability. As for the charges against Netanyahu and Gallant, it's war crimes and crimes against humanity. Targeting of civilians is one of the charges against them. But the primary one, and this is something that even the UK government has recognised they have concerns about, especially that under international humanitarian law, Israel is an occupying power. We had the decision from the International Court of Justice earlier this year on the advisory opinion case on this. But really, the charges stem from starvation, the impediments to humanitarian aid being brought in, the destruction of those infrastructures necessary for civilian life. So food, water, electricity, medical supplies, the fact that hospitals have been almost completely destroyed,
But I guess, Elizabeth, they would say, supporters of Israel would say, well, don't put your military bases in hospitals. Hamas stop stealing all the aid that's going into Gaza. And also, a lot of aid workers from the UNWA are found to be Hamas terrorists.
Again, there were 7 out of thousands of UNRWA workers. The conditions...
That they found, I'd argue.
I mean, they did a very thorough investigation on this. But on top of that, you have other organizations that are legitimate. There's been disinformation from Israel and things that have been disproved by really incredible journalists and news outlets who showed that the allegations of what was being used. But even then, international law still has very strict principles of targeting, distinction, proportionality, that you have to look at the civilian harm. And even if there are military advantages, you have to consider the civilian harm. And in this case, when you have 44,000 deaths, hundreds of thousands displaced...
So can I ask you about those deaths? Because I have raised concerns on this channel before. I've heard those kind of figures. And I've said, of course, as a father, as any normal person, I've said, yeah, that's quite concerning. But where do those figures come from? Is it the Hamas-run health authority? Have we got any independent figures from, I don't know, the UN or what's Israel's figures?
The UN figures do come close to that. Again, but it is difficult because Israel is impeding even access for investigators. They've, it's become a very dangerous place for journalists to document and investigate. You have over 100 journalists that have been killed. But even medical professional, independent medical personnel who have been working in Gaza have reported on the number of bodies that they've seen. But also not just that. I think what really becomes horrifying is the fact that people who need surgery are unable to have anesthesia or basic medication. Children are being disfigured, amputations, just horrible, horrible circumstances, and they cannot even get the follow-up care for this. And so...
Well, why not? I mean, where is the anaesthetic? What's happening to medical supplies?
It's not being allowed in. The number of trucks that are being allowed in...
Who's stopping it?
Israel. Their conditions
Why would they do that?
They are allowing probably 1% of the amount of trucks in now than they did before October 7th, 2023.
And you're saying that's intentional?
It is. It has been an intentional attempt to commit starvation, to impede aid. When you look at their overall, and even the ICJ recognized that this was a grave concern, that they're not allowing even in the minimal amounts of humanitarian aid.
Haven't the likes of UNICEF, though, they've acted as intermediaries and allowed to... Why can't they go in and deliver vaccinations and medical supplies? I know Israel have made efforts to do that, so I don't quite understand why this argument that Israel is just deliberately starving Gaza and deliberately blocking medical supplies going through. Why can't we use people like UNICEF? They have been down there in Gaza and Palestine trying to work.
I mean, the humanitarian situation is a complex one, but at the end of the day, even the United States had put pressure on Israel and given them a 30-day deadline to show that they were getting enough aid in. And the US still expressed concerns. The UK government, in their September IHL review, expressed the same concerns, that even taking the war aside, that they had concerns of starvation, the aid that was coming in, the medical supplies, the destruction of water sources, electricity, that it's conditions of life, as the legal term is, that make life unliving, basically.
Yeah, OK, fascinating. Elizabeth Dill, thank you. I did say on October the 8th last year, I said, you just wait, and I tweeted this, you can probably find it. I said, you just wait. Once Israel does respond, soon after that, they won't be allowed to respond properly. There'll be so much international pressure. So I do wonder if that's what we're seeing play out now. But thank you, Elizabeth Dill, for your company. Right, coming up, all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages in my press pack, and more reaction to the death of John Prescott, and... I love this. A rather awkward moment for the BBC involving YouTuber Logan Paul. You don't want to miss that clip. That's next. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The snow and ice risk continues this evening and overnight, and it is going to remain cold before we introduce unsettled weather over the weekend as Storm Bert moves its way in from the west. For the time being, though, we remain in this cold northerly Arctic flow, bringing us that snow and ice risk, so still plenty of snow showers feeding their way in, mainly across northern coast of Scotland, a few feeding into northern coast of Northern Ireland, northwest England and northern parts of Wales, though some may feed inland at times. Where we see the clear skies overnight, that's where we're expecting quite a sharp frost and some patches of ice too. So do take care if you're out and about during early Friday morning. So the showers are set to continue around coastal areas of Scotland, though some may feed inland at times with a brisk northerly flow pushing them inland. Mainly falling as snow over high ground, though likely to see some flurries to lower levels too. A few showers feeding into northern coast of Northern Ireland, northwest England and northern parts of Wales too, so still a snow risk here. But otherwise there'll be plenty of bright sunshine to start on Friday, but still feeling particularly chilly and with those icy stretches too. So otherwise for Friday, it's going to be a mix once again of those wintry showers and some bright sunshine. Showers mainly feeding into northwestern coasts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England and northern parts of Wales. These heavy at times and turning to sleet and snow, mainly above high ground, but once again could fall to lower levels too. Elsewhere, plenty of autumnal sunshine, but once again it is going to be feeling chilly for this time in November. As we head into Saturday, unsettled weather as Storm Bert moves its way in from the west. Heavy outbreaks of rain, this falling to snow at times in the north and strong winds across parts of Scotland too. And we do have an amber snow and ice warning issued for parts of Scotland, so do stay up to date to our forecasts. So an unsettled weekend ahead. Otherwise, that is it from me. Bye-bye for now.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello, welcome back. The first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages have just dropped. Let's start with the Daily Telegraph. Starmer supports arrest of Netanyahu. We were just talking about that. The International Court's bid to charge Israeli PM with war crimes condemned by the Tories. Daily Express. This is a big one. Labour hands over cash to foreign farmers. Labour's facing fury for destroying British farms with a tax raid as it sends hundreds of millions of pounds to foreign farmers in the likes of Africa, Asia and South America. Interesting. The Sun, 2,000 cops act, station hours cut to 9 to 5, and yet dodgy haircut is a hate crime. A complaint about a rough haircut was logged as a non-crime hate incident by cops. The UK and France will stand firm against Vladimir Putin, vows David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary. And the Metro, Brit lawyer dies from methanol in drink. Poison shots kill 5 tourists in Laos. Laos, that's Laos. Is that Portugal?
Laos. Laos. It's in Vietnam.
I'm thinking of Faro and Faro in Portugal.
You're just dreaming of sunshine, Ben.
I know, it's been a long week. Right, the Daily Express, what a story. Labour hands over cash to foreign farmers. 536 million pounds in foreign aid to foreign farmers, Suzanne.
So that's almost exactly the same amount as they're trying to take from farmers from inheritance tax in this country, which will fund the NHS for just one day.
Yes.
It's an absolute disgrace.
It's an absolute kick in the teeth. If you're a farmer and you've read that, that'll be a kick in the teeth. Somebody made a point to me, though. This affects constituencies that Labour probably didn't win. But let's see if it has an electoral effect on them, because this is the kind of thing that people will not forget.
And just politically, Matthew Laza, you could argue that the inheritance tax rate on farmers wasn't a good look anyway for the risk reward. As Suzanne said, it's £500 million,
it's nothing.
One day of the NHS, and at the same time, this is even worse. No, £500 million to foreign farmers.
If you're a farmer and you're angry, then this is going to make you even more angry. When you actually dig down into it, you find that what this isn't new money. This is existing money from within the aid budget, and it's going to help farmers in some of the poorest countries in the world grow food so we don't have starvation across the world.
Oh, Matthew,
so it's helping people grow their own food.
You're such an optimist, aren't you? That money,
I'd like to think so.
That money is going to farmers overseas. We're telling them what to grow. So they'll say, right, you grow bananas bananas, you grow coconuts. So they all grow bananas and coconuts. We get cheap bananas and coconut. It forces the prices down there. This is an absolute scam. This is not proper farming. It's not the best use of foreign aid. And frankly, it would have been far better if they'd taken that 500 million from those farmers, given it to British farmers to help keep food prices down here, which people are so struggling.
Well, I agree we need to support our farmers here, which is why they've got the biggest ever package of support for farmers in the budget. We can go back into the argument about the tax.
The government have given one hand and taken away with another. Listen, I agree.
From the biggest farmers.
I agree with helping only the very poorest people around the world. But I would say this, though. We can't feed them before we feed us.
Yeah, quite right. And there's a paragraph here, Matthew, so I'd like you to respond to this directly. There's a low-carbon project in Brazil, which is the world's 11th richest nation. So why should we be supporting?
Well, it's got the world's 11th largest economy. I mean, per capita, it isn't. Per head, it isn't the 11th richest. It's the 11th. It's a very big country, and there's a lot of real poverty in Brazil. But we need to make sure it's targeted. And I'm in favour of absolutely, which is why the government's trying to act on it.
This is the issue. We give money to people who have money. Now, imagine that was, somewhere really poor, had famine, fine, but Brazil is a functioning first world economy who should be taking care of their own issues.
Sean, what's the point of the foreign aid budget?
I'm not entirely sure. We have this notion...
I mean, who are we trying to please? What is it for, really?
We have this notion, right, of two things, soft power and our international reputation. I am sick to death of people in the political world imagining that anybody else in the world cares what we think. They absolutely don't. So if we're spending money on that, we shouldn't. The soft power thing is a little bit more nuanced. There is times where a relationship we have with a country built around a particular thing, we're helping them feed themselves, helping them start something, does have a benefit to us. But unless that benefit is quite direct, I don't think we should.
I don't think it should be done for our international reputation. International aid is a moral obligation to the poorest people in the world, which is why it must be targeted and why we should not be paying for the Indian space programme and some of the other horror stories we've had. Therefore, I think scrutiny is a good thing to ensure that the things we shouldn't be paying for are ironed out.
What's the current budget? Is it something like 11-12 billion foreign aid?
Yeah.
That sounds about right. It's 1.5% of GNI.
Even halving that.
Well, the Tories did cut it slightly.
When people talk about the Tories and what we did in the last Parliament, some of it is indefensible, but the cut in foreign aid was not. That was the thing.
Well, it was opposed by Theresa May and David Cameron.
Well, good for them, but it was something that we needed to do because we have real problems here, and it's that basic thing. If we suffer, eventually that budget will disappear altogether.
Yeah. But if you want things like to keep migration down, you need to ensure that people have more reason to stay in their countries.
Working.
Well, it could be a worse situation for them. It could be an even worse situation.
We are funding migration separately. Yeah. Separately. We have a whole other thing.
No, I mean, if you improve conditions in country, then people have less incentive to leave. Also, the Tories have taken the cost of the hotels. Some of it has come out of the international aid budget.
That was brilliant. That was right to do because we're still helping foreign nationals.
The foreign aid budget is such a disgrace that they are paying civil servants bonuses to spend it on time every year.
And do you know what?
It's far too big. That wouldn't be happening.
Well, I still go into the Oxfam shop. I still put my few quid in the Christian aid envelope.
I want to go back to that moral responsibility. We are propping up governments around the world who are not doing the right thing by their people, and we're paying for it. We shouldn't be doing that.
And so much of it's going in corruption.
I listened to this on another radio station today. I listened to a really heartbreaking call from a pensioner. She called in, and the presenter eventually established that this lady, she was a pensioner, fairly old. She was calling from Leicester, where the producer looked up at the time of the call. It was 1 degree in Leicester. It was freezing cold. She admitted that she didn't want to put her heating on. She was sat freezing cold in her flat. She began to break down in tears. She was crying. She was saying how she couldn't understand why, in a country where she's grafted for 40 years, she's slaved away, blood, sweat and tears in Britain, that she now couldn't afford and was too scared and frightened to put her heating on because she just simply couldn't afford it. And it really broke my heart. And when I hear stories like this, where we're throwing hundreds of millions of pounds to countries who don't need the money, the winter fuel allowance is, what are they recouping from that?
Well, nothing, because, of course, they've encouraged everybody who wasn't on pension credit to take up pension credit. So now it's actually going to cancel. It's the most ridiculous policy imaginable. They didn't stress test it. They didn't think about it. It was something that a civil servant had been pushing for years, and they said, oh, that's a good idea, let's do it.
Do you know it really shows you two things it shows that are important. The Labour Party did not have a plan how to run this country.
No,
that's why
we found that you guys had left the country in a terrible state, Sean.
That's why they're making these huge mistakes. The other thing as well is ideological. These are choices that they've made. They could have done for it. This isn't about money. And here's the real thing. They said they wouldn't raise income tax, they wouldn't raise corporation tax, and the other one I can't remember, but that's 70% of the government's tax intake. If you don't raise them, you then expose yourself to have to raise all the other taxes, which have devastating, irreplaceable consequences, i.e., what we're doing to pensioners.
But they also promised.
I hope that the lady in question it was helped to get pension credit. Sounds like she would be entitled to it. I hope that increases her income and she can turn the heating on. But I don't think we should be sending the winter fuel allowance to millionaires or even people on large salaries. I would have done it in a slightly more graduated way than the government's done it. But there is a very strong case for taking the winter fuel allowance away from the richest pensioners, because the country we've got to pay for that black hole and the Tories' unfunded promises.
Why don't they identify the rich?
It's not. I would take away from people on over 30, 40, 35 grand a year, basically above average income.
It's fictitious. The problem for the Labour Party, you saw what they've done to the farmers. In their minds, there's this mystery group of rich people who have all of our tax money. It just doesn't.
It's
work
the 500 richest farmers.
It doesn't work like that. It just doesn't work like that.
Matthew, Labour are the new nasty party, aren't they?
We've had to take some really tough decisions, but hopefully they're going to pay off in terms of the economy growing. Because the Tories left unfunded policy after unfunded policy.
You've said that twice now, that the Tories... I'm no massive Tory fan, let me tell you that, but you've said that twice, that the Tories left such a mess. They left inflation at target, or at least below target.
For 1 month.
They left record GDP figures for the first 6 months of this year, the best in the G7, the best in decades. They left the Bank of England interest rates falling, mortgage rates falling, cost of living falling, energy bills falling. So you keep saying that they picked up this horrible mess. Looks like to me they picked up a pretty decent.
Well, they did. The energy bills. Look, on those economic metrics, they had a few good months, which is why they chanced their arm in the election. But the record across the 14 years is of failure and underinvestment, and that takes time to sort out. Of course, the government's unpopular, having to do really, and you're going to say this is difficult things, but there were whole policies like there was $1.5 billion hole in paying for for the immigration. How do you do it? You want to cut the health service, Suzanne?
No.
Okay,
no,
so that's fine. So at the moment, the Tories have coming.
I tell you what I wouldn't do if I was Chancellor and I found a so-called 22 billion black hole. I wouldn't give Ed Miliband another 22 billion.
Okay, so you'd have those green jobs go to other countries.
Untried carbon.
You'd have green jobs.
You
would push us back.
Hold on. Let me just intervene.
You're against British success.
No, let me just say what Matthew's doing is what people on the left, the Labour Party, always do. They throw all of these nice sounding sound bites at you. But let's be clear: the money that's been given to Ed Miliband is for a technology that hasn't worked anywhere else in the world.
And do you know what, Matthew? Yeah. Even eco-zealots think that carbon capture is a load of BS.
Well, actually, that's probably the reason why some people should be in favour of it, because it's a sensible solution, and it's going to be happening in Humberside, and it's going to be happening in Humberside. It's ultimately how we will lower energy bills. We can't pretend that the world isn't changing. We can't pretend the world isn't changing. And let's just remind ourselves, Sean, your party at the moment has two policies, the two policies going into is to cut taxes for the most rich farmers and cut taxes on private school fees. Those are the two policies that Kerry Badenoch's announced, and you wonder why she's doing so badly.
You have a tax on education, and you have a tax that's going to destroy the farming industry.
It's ridiculous.
A tax on the minority, a lot of whom are not even British, in posh schools.
I think the Tories are onto something here. They're two taxes they should change.
Yeah. Matthew, you remind me of Comical Ali during the invasion.
Oh, that's harsh.
Everything's fine.
No, I don't think it's fine. I think it's tough for the government, but you have to get the pain in to get the gain in over time.
A lot of pain.
Great stuff. All right, coming up, more of those front pages and a very awkward moments for the BBC involving YouTuber Logan Paul. Have you seen this clip? I really want to show it to you, and you at home, stay around for that. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News.
Friday night live with Mark Dolan from 8 p.m.
You know, whenever I want to have a laugh, I will fire up a Ricky Gervais special on Netflix. He's funny, isn't he? Very politically incorrect. I might watch a vintage episode of Fawlty Towers if it hasn't been cancelled. Or I could just read up on the latest musings from the Welsh Labour government. And this week they have waged war on the countryside, which is apparently unwelcoming to British people of colour. Well, it's true, isn't it? I mean, those racial checkpoints in the Wye Valley are completely unacceptable. And the snowy bits of Mount Snowdon scream white privilege. Can you believe this story? It's proof, if you needed it, that Welsh Labour are barking mad and talking a load of shih tzu.
I think what's so interesting about this, I mean, this is an absurd question. This is ridiculous. Obviously, dogs and the countryside are not inherently racist. I think this entire connection between what is effective cultural Marxism in addition to what is effective socialism that is at the heart of Welsh Labour and many other hard left groups in the United Kingdom.
I got to do a correction
Go
because
on.
it's not Welsh Labour. It was one little thinky tanky that did some research. I know it was taxpayer funded, but it was just a suggestion. Welsh Labour have not gone, yes, that's a good idea. This research, which I wholly agree is quite absurd, was done by interviewing the 4% ethnic minorities of Wales, and they came out with the fact that they don't feel welcome in green spaces because there are so many dogs, and that's how this was born. I mean, I don't know whether that makes it make any more sense.
And the fact that taxpayers are footing the bill for research like this is the real scandal. That we had this earlier conversation about the National Health Service, where all of our money is going and being wasted, and it is also being wasted on absolute nonsense like this.
GB News, the People's Chat.
Hello, welcome back. More front pages have just dropped. Let's start with the Daily Mail. Here we go, Matthew. Ed Miliband to slap green tax on your boiler. He's accused of trying to force us to switch to costly heat pumps as well. It would add £120 to the cost of a boiler. The Guardian, ICC arrest warrant for Netanyahu, and a picture of the late John Prescott there. Good snap, actually. It's
a great picture.
A titan of the Labour movement. Let's talk about Ed Miliband. So we're just talking about all these insane, Matthew, Labour policies. He's back again, Ed Miliband, running riot with more taxes.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see the detail on this because Ed made absolutely clear that the Tories actually copied his promise in the election campaign because they were going to force people to basically ban the sale of new gas boilers. Ed said that wasn't going to happen. Labour gave that pledge. They need to pledge they need to stick to. I mean, gas boilers are on their way out, but they shouldn't be the government forcing them out. It should be because technology improves and we can have different types of heating.
What he's doing here is exactly the same as the government's done with electric vehicles. So for every electric vehicle that a car manufacturer doesn't sell, for every non-electric vehicle a car manufacturer sells over their quota, they have to pay a fine of £15,000. But nobody wants electric vehicles. Everybody wants petrol. Nobody wants heat pumps. I got a quote for one, 45,000 quid. Ludicrous.
Sean, very quick word.
Ludicrous.
If the same thing happens to the gas boiler industry that happened to the electric car industry, we'll be in a lot of trouble.
We'll be in a lot of trouble.
OK, I want to show you this clip. YouTuber Logan Paul sent a lookalike to fill in for him during a BBC interview where they were set to ask questions on allegations that the influencer profited from misleading fans into investing in cryptocurrency. Watch this.
I have to say the real Logan Paul looks very different.
Did you come all over here to ask about how I look?
Is Logan coming?
I'm right here, bud. You came all the way to Puerto Rico from England. This is your interview. What do you got?
Look, these are some very serious questions. You know, there are people who really want to know the answers to these questions.
I'm a serious person.
Let's just get out of here.
They hired web files. Neither. Stop touching child leaders.
So the BBC were flown, well, they flew 6,000 miles to Peru for an interview. It wasn't him, it was a lookalike, and they got trolled. Very funny.
Legitimate questions they were asking, and you know, I think the fact that the guy wouldn't face them, that says something in itself.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure who looks worse him or them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they turned up in good faith.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Well, we did reach out to the BBC for comment on this, but we didn't get a reply, unfortunately. Shall we get stuck into Greatest Britain Union Jackass? Suzanne, your Greatest Britain nomination.
So my Greatest Britain today is Rupert Lowe, the Reform MP, because he's doing a jolly good job, and particularly because he's using Parliament to ask questions that many MPs just won't ask. So anything from waste of money questions. So he found out that not only did the Department of Health spend millions on useless PPE at the height of the COVID frenzy, but it's still spending £200,000 a week storing it Numpty-ish, absolutely ridiculous.
He's been relentless.
Been relentless, talking about he's found that 39,000 foreign offenders re-offended once they were let out of jail when they should have been reported. All those crimes could have been avoided.
Sure.
He's doing a great job.
So my greatest Britain is John Prescott. He was a real public servant. He was a titan in the Labour Party, and he actually represented what people believe Labour is about. Tony Blair would not have existed, would not have succeeded without John.
Matthew, your greatest...
Well, I'd love to have done John, but Sean got me to me first, and it's lovely that Sean said that. Mine is a light-hearted one, which is my old boss, TV presenter Jeremy Vine, who I used to produce, for getting very confused this morning and confusing coming out as a bisexual when he meant to be coming out as ambidextrous. So he can use both hands. He doesn't play for both sides. To clarify.
OK, the winner is going to be the late John Prescott. Yeah, what a character, a political juggernaut, and
best right hand in politics.
Exactly. Yeah. We need to be very, very quick. You're Union Jackass.
Ed Miliband, for obvious reasons, he's an idiot, a net zero zealot, and this boiler tax is going to be a nightmare.
Sean?
Mine is the Labour government for the cuts to defence. They should be adding to the equipment, not taking away. It is old. We don't need to talk about old equipment. We need to talk about new equipment, and we need to fund our soldiers better.
Mine is Captain Tom's daughter and son-in-law for putting the wool over all of our eyes and being criticised in the Charity Commission report and letting, of course, down the man himself.
Gosh, they're all such... I wish I could pick three winners. Ed Miliband, because he runs riot across the countryside, slapping people with silly green taxes, and, yeah, there's just something about him. Guys, thank you so much for tonight. Really appreciate you being with me. It's been fun. Coming up next is Headliners, presented by Josh Howie. Josh, what's in store?
Hello. ASBOs are making a comeback. They're going to be called respect orders. We have dodgy haircuts, no comment, and a possible U-turn on the farmers' tax. We also have Lewis Schaefer and Kerry Marks. So let's just see if we don't get Ofcom calling us up tomorrow.
OK, yeah, thank you, Josh. Not sure you're the best person to be commenting on haircuts, although you do look much better after ditching the hair. What does your wife think? Was she the catalyst behind it?
She's kissing me all the time.
Oh, yeah, good. Nice. OK, thanks, Josh. Catch up with you in a sec. Thank you at home for watching. I'll be back again from tomorrow from 9 p.m. Up next, of course, it's Headliners. That's after your weather with Honor Krizik. It's going to be a very, very cold one. It was indeed earlier tonight. Good night, have a good night, and see you tomorrow.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The snow and ice risk continues this evening and overnight, and it is going to remain cold before we introduce unsettled weather over the weekend as Storm Bert moves its way in from the west. For the time being, though, we remain in this cold northerly Arctic flow, bringing us that snow and ice risk, so still plenty of snow showers feeding their way in, mainly across northern coast of Scotland, a few feeding into northern coast of Northern Ireland, northwest England and northern parts of Wales, though some may feed inland at times. Where we see the clear skies overnight, that's where we're expecting quite a sharp frost and some patches of ice too. So do take care if you're out and about during early Friday morning. So the showers are set to continue around coastal areas of Scotland, though some may feed inland at times with a brisk northerly flow pushing them inland. Mainly falling as snow over high ground, though likely to see some flurries to lower levels too. A few showers feeding into northern coast of Northern Ireland, northwest England and northern parts of Wales too. So still a snow risk here. But otherwise there'll be plenty of bright sunshine to start on Friday, but still feeling particularly